Hello, and thank you for joining our webinar, What to Automate First in Your SOC, part of our Intro to Torq series. And I am joined here today by our host speaker, Ryan Darst, Director of Automation here at Torq. Yeah, awesome. And so let's actually just dive right into things. So I'm going to hand it over to Ryan to take away.
Thanks, Krista. My name is Ryan Darst, Director of Security Automation here at Torq. So let's get started. So how did we get here? We have numerous issues driving the need for better automation. We see a growth in everything. It's not only cloud, it's our network, it's our devices, and the threats that never seem to slow down. We have a growing number of point solutions that are generating more and more events, and with each event, more and more data to evaluate and consume. In addition to that, in the US specifically, there are many jobs that have been left open, and it's a challenge to find the people to fulfill the open roles. This leaves us with an enormous amount of work to be done, and automation is obviously a key to fulfilling that. Our current tools can be limiting. We have a number of tools that have various functions to be able to do different things. But many times we hear from our customers that it takes a lot of effort in these legacy systems and a lot of scripting capability and expertise to build usable workflows. Sometimes, even with the help of professional services, it can take months to accomplish a single usable workflow in some environments. These tools also are intended for very specific use cases where they may not be able to provide additional functionality to cover other areas of our business. Think of automating a just-in-time use case with identity and access management driven by a collaboration tool. Also, what direction do we take? Where do we start with automation? This is one of the first things I've been asked for the last 7 or 8 years of my career, is what do we start with? What do we do? How do we know that we're being effective? Maybe the solution you have today isn't as effective as we thought it would have been when we started using it. So we have many requirements for automation to make it more effective. And one of the first things is to reduce alert fatigue for our analysts. Obviously, we want to make sure that when we get an event, we have as much detail and as much data provided as possible, enriching the event from as many sources as possible. Clearly, we want to prevent false positives. We want to make sure we're only working on the relevant events. Having the ability to do things that are repetitive and mundane and automate these processes is a key. Should an analyst pull from multiple threat sources for a simple IOC to do a comparison? Or should we have the system pull them and update it, let's say a JIRA issue, automatically when we see them? We want to be able to remediate as well, or maybe even take a device offline if it's been infected and matches a specific risk score, so we can automatically do that today with many vendors. There's the other side of the coin, where we don't want to take something down that we shouldn't. I've spent a portion of my career in healthcare, and we have many devices that are used for life safety concerns, and those certain devices we may not want to take offline. So we need to have those checks and balances in our automation to be able to do the right thing and do them correctly. With faster response, we also will improve our posture. The need to have seamless integration. And this is a key point. What if we can start integrating with all of our security products, or most of them? Not just one or two, but think of the possibility of connecting the identity and access management systems, the endpoint, the ticketing, the threat management systems, all of them together. Being able to do this makes each one of the existing systems much more relevant. We also want to make sure that whenever we use for automation, we can change it and modify it easily. If we can't change it, if we can't make it flexible, it'll become static and not very useful in the future. But if we can continually change it and make modifications to it easily, it's going to give us more value over time and serve us more. Now, this brings us to Torq. We are a no-code platform that gives you the ability to interact with any number of systems. This gives us access to a large amount of information across our landscape of security products. With a drag and drop editor, we provide our workflows so you can build workflows easily and connect them to as many integration partners as possible. With this editor, changing and updating the workflow is as easy as dragging steps onto our canvas. We are vendor agnostic. You can connect to any number of vendors that you may want, whether they be in the cloud, on-prem, or even in a hybrid environment. We also provide a template library to have a number of use cases and templates that are pre-configured to use within a number of different use cases. So getting started with Torq is very simple. Again, going back to the template library, we have a number of templates that are available to you. We provide templates across a number of use cases, from CSPM, endpoint, IAM, and threat enrichment, and more. For instance, using an integration with Armis and acting on an event that we receive about a device that's connecting to a command and control site, we can run some type of remediation or some other type of check against the device, maybe even taking it offline. Or providing a just-in-time access using Okta or Jump Cloud are simple examples of what's available in the template library. We are customer-led. We take compelling ideas from our customers and build workflows and templates that everyone can take advantage of. Also, we understand that not everyone has the exact same list of products that they're using, and this is why the template library has a diverse set of templates and integrations. For instance, we have customers that may be using Slack. We have other customers that are using Microsoft Teams, and our platform provides the ability to very easily replace steps with one or the other. For instance, as well, we have templates that are optimized for almost every platform that you may want to use. Whether your CSPM is Wiz, Orca, Prisma Cloud, or Lacework, we have templates that can be used with all of them. And think of Torq as a central nervous system between all of your events and systems. Being able to move data between each one of them is simple. As I stated before, our integrations, we can connect to almost anything. You can use an API, you can use an HTTP call, we can receive webhooks, send webhooks. There's no separate packages or connectors that are needed. We also give you the ability to have steps built into the system that allow you to connect to our partners and integrations. But one of the things we want to make sure of is that we never stop you or block you from being able to integrate with another system or an API. We give you that flexibility, and that if a new version of an API comes out, you're not going to stop you from integrating with it. You can very easily use an HTTP request to make that connection to an updated API. We also have a number of utilities, so you can do things like date functions, data transformation, where we can change, manipulate JSON data. You can also do logical functions. We can do ifs, loops, and wait or time delays as well. And this gives you the capability of creating some really interesting use cases. Now, we provide support for any approach you want to take. From the template library, you can pull complete workflows as is and use them. But you may want to modify or customize it. Maybe you want to have a different output or change some part of the workflow. And that's very easy to do, again, with our designer. You can also build your own. Our customers take our easy-to-use designer and build their own workflows very easily. We have examples or customers that have taken our designer and built 30 workflows in less than a month. So let's take a look at some of the templates and the examples that we have available. So one of the most compelling uses of the platform is the ability to use bots or chatbots. And this gives us the ability, we can communicate with end users or even, let's say, SOC analysts or be alerted on different types of issues that may come up. This gives us the ability, we can actually use this to automate repetitive work. Maybe we have a Slack mention that we use to look up an IOC, and it would go out and look at all of the different threat enrichment systems that we have and provide us a response. Maybe we want to use this with users to do some type of just-in-time access. And speaking of just-in-time access, we can also tie into identity and access management. We can reduce the human error in our policy compliance. Again, being able to do something like a just-in-time access, we can pull the user's access after a certain amount of time automatically and not have to rely on a ticket or somebody's schedule to remove that. We can also provision, deactivate different components. Maybe if somebody hasn't logged into Okta for 2 weeks, we disable their account. One of the other things that I see quite a bit is just something as simple as getting a notification of some type of audit or some type of alert. Maybe I want to know how many new CSPM events I've seen across my entire set of accounts that I may be using within a system. So I know, for instance, on a specific day, there's more issues in one CSPM account or one account that I may have, let's say within AWS, or an organization or a structure that you may have that you're monitoring across multiples. We can provide you a daily list of different things so you don't have to log into each one of those or look at reports for all of them, give you a snapshot of what you may be looking at. We can connect with a number of identity providers, whether that's Okta, Jump Cloud, Azure Active Directory. All of those are built in. And then we also have the ability to tie into our endpoint systems, get threat intelligence, and process threats as they come in. Again, reducing the human error in our policy compliance, being able to do things automatically, enrich our threat intelligence, being able to do, again, automate a lot of these processes of where an analyst may be doing some of these things manually, where we can automate those processes. And I'll show this in an example of one of the workflows here in just a few minutes. And we can also enable teams to collaborate using collaboration tools like Slack or Microsoft Teams to update users in real time on issues, or even analysts. It really just depends. So let's go over to the template library and take a look and see what's available. So if we look at the template library, we have a number of different templates that are available. We can filter them. We can filter them by our easy starters or our featured templates, and a number of different use cases that we have corresponding to each. I want to start with a template that's built as an easy starter for Jira. So this is an example of using Jira on the life cycle of an issue within Jira itself. So I'm going to go ahead and use the Get Started and pull this template into my tenant. You may ask, why would we start with Jira? Well, this is a simple example of using our steps, our designer, and our single step execution to be able to explain and show how the platform operates. Also, Jira is a very common use case or a common integration that we have where we're either updating a ticket, creating a ticket, and sending it along to some part of the workflow, or maybe even looking up results within Jira on an existing issue. So this workflow goes hand in hand with being able to show how we integrate with that. So as part of the workflow, we have a set of workflow variables at the top. Now this is set so that we have all of our information in one place, so we only have to change it here and nowhere else in the workflow. I'm going to go ahead and grab my information that I have here set aside for my settings for Jira. And these are my Jira sites, my project, and the email that I want to use for my assignments for the users. So the workflow itself on our canvas has a number of steps for everything that we want to do with Jira. We have some notes on each part of this, but I'm going to go ahead and run this workflow step by step. So I'm going to execute the set workflow variables. This puts our variables into our context. I'm going to go ahead and log into Jira and get our session token. And when I run the create issue, all of these parameters for set site, summary, and project key are going to be used to create my issue. So I have a new issue that's been created called SOC 243. Now, if I go and take a look, we have these variables. These came from our set workflow variable step. And if I look at the option here, we can actually see what these equate to in our workflow, in our step. So we see where these come from and what they actually evaluate to. Now, if I go back to SOC, or to my SOC board in Jira, we can see that we have our example summary, our example description, and our issue that was created. It's unassigned at this point. We're going to do that as part of the workflow. And this is SOC 243. So if I go back to Jira, I'm going to go ahead and search for the user. And again, this is the user that came out of the workflow variable, so Christopher. I want to go ahead and search for this user. And we can see that I get an ID for that user and a bunch of more information from Jira itself. I'm going to use that ID that I retrieved under the assignee account ID to assign the issue to the user. So if I go back to the SOC board, open the SOC 243, we can see this is now assigned to Chris. If I add a comment to the issue, I can get the issue comment. So if I wanted to go through and search through the Jira issue, I could see the contents of the comment, and this is what I just added. And you can also notice that I used some notation here where this create issue key was passed through to the comments. So the create issue key was the key that was created with the issue. So I added that as part of the comment. Now if I want to update the issue status, I'm going to change it to in progress. And I'm going to go ahead and add an attachment as well. This is a common use case where maybe you have threat intel or some other piece of information you want to add as an attachment or evidence of something to the ticket to provide more relevance. So we can see that this is what I'm going to have in the file. This is my file contents, and I'm just putting that issue key in here again, and I'm giving it a file name of my file name. If I go ahead and run this attached the file. And if I go take a look again at our issue, we can see that it moved to in progress. We have an attachment. We have our comment that was added. And if I open the attachment, we can see that this is my file contents is attached to the issue. Again, we could attach any number of piece of information there as needed that we could attach to it with that one step. I can also use a JQL query in Jira to be able to query Jira for information. So if I want to see in this particular case, what I'm looking for is the description of, this is an example description, which is what I created with this issue, and status of not done. So this is going to give me every issue that matches this criteria. So maybe I have a ticket or some assignment that happens within Jira. I could proactively or on a scheduled interval go look for specific items or types of issues or tickets and pull them in. Or maybe I could do a search for specific issues that are open, that have passed some SLA or some other information. I have an example of this in the template library of doing that for ServiceNow. And we can also move the status to done. So if I go ahead and close this issue, we'll see that it will move to the done status and it's complete. So this is SOC 243. Now if I want to go back, let's run this entire workflow from the top. There's no dependencies on anything else. We'll just create another ticket within Jira. I'm going to hit the test run button. And what this is doing for me is it's going to run each one of these steps one by one in series. We'll see that it's going to create a new issue. It's going to search for the user. We can see it's already been assigned. We already have our comments added. And if I go back, it'll probably be done in the done state by the time we get here. Yes, so SOC 244 was completed. Same exact steps as before. It created the attachment, added the comments, assigned the user, and went to done. again, this is a simple, straightforward how-to type of template that shows you all the steps that you can use with Jira. But in addition, these were just the most common ones. We have a whole host of steps that are available for Jira to be able to move issues in and out of different statuses and do different operations on the tickets. These are the most common ones that I see. So what if we went into something a little more interesting? Let's do something with threat enrichment. So if I go back to my templates, let's look for VirusTotal. I have a simple workflow that uses VirusTotal to look up, to get findings based in Slack. So here we go. So I'm looking for the chatbot VirusTotal analyze suspicious URLs and IPs via Slack. So let's go ahead and get started with this one. Again, very similar to the previous workflow. We have some information for each one of these and what it's doing. And I'll explain the workflow very simply. We're going to receive a Slack mention with the keyword of analyze. When we receive this, we're going to run the workflow. And inside of the workflow, we're going to look for specific things. We're going to send a confirmation. We're going to pull the IPv4s and the URLs from the message. If we don't find anything, we'll send something back to the user saying there was no IP or URL that was found. But then we're going to go through and loop over all the IP addresses. We'll confirm the IP with the user, and then we'll look it up within VirusTotal and provide the result. The same thing with the URLs. The URLs work a little bit differently in VirusTotal, or if it's not found, we will have to go through and kind of loop through and make sure the analysis is complete within VirusTotal. But same type of operation. We'll go get the results. Once we have them, we'll send them back to the user. And then we'll send a thank you message at the very end. So very simple and straightforward to use this one as well. Now, again, just like before, I have my workflow variables. And in this one, I'm calling my integration name with Slack. I'm calling it Slack Steps. Other than that, no changes. I pulled this straight in from the template library. I'm going to go ahead and publish this one. And this makes it available for me to use. So now that it's been published, I'm going to use this analyze command in Slack. So I have Slack already created, or my Torq bot created. I'll use the keyword analyze, and I'm going to grab, just have a specific bad IP here I'm going to use. And I'm going to run it. So we can see that I've already received a reply back from our workflow. And we have some enrichment here. So the information comes back. We have, it says, hi Ryan, your message was received. Do you want to scan this IP, or do you want to analyze this IP with VirusTotal? I'm going to go ahead and say yes. So what this is doing, it goes out to VirusTotal, runs the workflow, and provides me back the information. We can see that we have 4 malicious hits in this particular IP address. And we have our thank you message at the end. But what if I wanted to do the same thing, but maybe I had another, let's say a URL I wanted to include? I'm going to go ahead and just do google.com. Again, the workflow gets called. In the thread, we'll have a reply. We'll go ahead and scan this one or get the results for this IP one more time. We can see the same result, and then I'm going to do Google as well, and we'll see what the result comes back here. And our Google result comes back with 0. And we can see that this completes our workflow operation. So again, very quickly, think about building a workflow of maybe I want to not just do VirusTotal, maybe you're using Recorded Future, Alien Vault, whatever it may be. You could use that within that workflow. Now, the way our workflow is actually built as well is not only do you have the designer where you can make the changes to these workflows, You can also use, we can also see in the run log each run that occurred with the system, and we can see how it actually operated. We can see where it went through the loops and the output that was provided. So we can see everything that was included. And if I wanted to go back and look at, let's say, the analysis results from VirusTotal, we can see here, this is what was provided, and it looped through this one time. So a very simple use case, or a simple use case of getting specific data from VirusTotal. So now let's take that use case of where we may want to pull from multiple threat sources. Let's go back to the template library. And I'm going to look for threat intelligence. So threat intelligence retrieve and normalize data on a hash, and we can see that we have the integrations with Alien Vault, Recorded Future, and VirusTotal. Let's go ahead and operate this one, or pull this into our tenant. Now, this workflow is designed to be used as a nested workflow, where we would call this from another workflow itself, and we would pass in some information. And when we look at the on-demand for this workflow, we can see that we're going to receive a hash as part of our event. Again, same thing as before. We look at our workflow variables. These are set for what will work in my environment. But let's take a look at the workflow and what this is doing. We actually can enable and disable different threat intelligence sources. So if you have VirusTotal, Recorded Future, Alien Vault, if you want to use all of them, you set those to true. If you want those disabled, you set them to false. We set some variables here to store data in. And then as we go through, if we're using VirusTotal, if we're using Recorded Future, we get different information, or different components. And if they provide, each one of those provide specific pieces of information, we're going to add that to our data to provide back at the very end. Now, at the end of the workflow, we provide a normalized score. So basically what this means is if all three of these threat sources tell us it's malicious or suspicious, we'll mark that as a 1 for each one. Then we'll divide it amongst all three of them. So a 1 means that it's completely, all three of them are setting it as malicious. If it's, let's say, one of the three does not, so it'd be like a 0.67. But again, we're just providing a simple score using simple math for that. And we're providing that score and all the hash data, and then all the details from each one of the threat sources as part of the information at the very end. So let me go ahead and run this workflow just like we did before. Let's go ahead and, when we run it, it's going to ask for a hash. And I'm going to go ahead and I have a hash here. I'm going to copy and paste in. And we'll execute this and we'll run this test run. Again, we're going to execute the workflow, and we have it set to go through VirusTotal, Recorded Future, and we'll see if I can catch the end of it. Well, actually, it's already completed. It's already went through Recorded Future, Alien Vault, and VirusTotal already. If we look at the run log, we can actually see the data that's included here, and in the exit, we'll see all the data that was included. And at the very end, I'm going to go to the very end of the JSON data that we're sending, and we see our normalized score and our score that we're sending through. We can see this as malware. We have a MITRE attack framework with some references, first seen, last seen. All of this data has been aggregated from all of our threat sources. We also have our details for each one of them. Alien Vault, VirusTotal, and Recorded Future are included in all of these. So again, this workflow is meant to be run as a nested workflow from another workflow itself. So what if we wanted to use this, again, kind of like I showed before, something as simple as I want to look up this data within Slack. We can very easily do that. So let's go and let's create a new workflow. I'll just call it hash lookup. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this nested workflow. And the name of that nested workflow was Threat Intelligence, Retrieve Data on a Hash. So I'm going to go ahead and pick that workflow. And if I wanted to put that hash in that I had before, I could. I could very easily copy this hash, put it in, and when I run this, it's going to do exactly what it did before. It's going to call virus total, call recorded future, and alien vault, and provide my information back to me. And once that's complete, all of that hash data will come back in the threat score that's available. So it's complete, and again, same as before. And go down and look. I have my normalized score of 1 and 3. But how do I want to? Maybe I want to trigger this, with Slack. So what I can do is I could use a webhook. I could use maybe some other event comes in from somewhere else. Maybe I want to trigger on that. But I want to use Slack as my integration. And I want to filter that based on the event text. And I'm picking this because I've been down this road before. And I'm just going to say this event text contains hash lookup. We're going to use that as our keyword here. So when we see an event with text that contains hash lookup, we're going to trigger the workflow. Now, as part of this, the event text, I want to go grab the SHA-256, and I want to extract the first one I see. So again, I'm going to select event, and then the text that may come in from that. And then instead of setting this value to a static value, I'm going to grab the extract, the first SHA-256 result, which will give me my hash. So this, again, makes this very flexible. So I can send a Slack mention with the hash. I'm going to extract it, send it through my nested workflow. And then let's say I want to send something back to the user, again, via Slack. I can send a message back to the user, and I'm going to send it to the channel, event channel. And this will have the information in there. And then I have a little bit of text here I'm going to put in just to make this quicker instead of me typing it all in. But this is basically saying the score was returned, and we're going to give it the threat score that came back from our nested workflow, and then the hash that was sent in to the user, or from the user from Slack. So again, I'm going to use hash lookup for the key, and a hash. So I'm going to go ahead and publish this. Okay, so I'll do my lookup now with hash lookup. And I'll paste in my information from my hash. Grab that real quick. And paste it in. And again, when this request gets sent to our workflow, I can go back and take a look at my run log, and we can see that this is running through our threat intelligence nested workflow. And you can see that we returned a score of 1 for that particular hash. Again, pretty simple use case of being able to turn that one nested workflow into the multiple. So being able to execute the nested workflow via Slack. And again, this could have come from, these triggers can be webhooks or integrations with our partners that could be Armis or Orca or Wiz, CrowdStrike, any number of vendors we can receive messages from. In this particular case, I'm using Slack as part of the interactive use of the platform. So next, let's look at maybe a just-in-time access that we may have within the template library. So I'm going to look for just-in-time, and I'm going to use just-in-time access with Okta with groups. Again, I'm going to go ahead and hit get started. Same as before, we have some information on using the workflow, the trigger we want to use for this just-in-time group, our workflow variables. Again, I'm just going to fix my Slack integration as Slack steps. Okta should be the same for me in my integrations. And then my groups. Now, the way this workflow operates is it's going through, when it's called, it's going to look in Okta for the groups that match these groups we want to offer to the user. So these are the ones that we want to limit. These are the only ones we want to offer, so these are the ones that we're going to set in this variable. But if we go through the workflow, what we actually see is the workflow variables. We find the user, find their email. We look up the user via email in Okta. And if they're active, because if they're not active, we don't want to offer them any groups. So they have to be active. So if they are active, we look for their groups that they have ownership to. We list all the groups in Okta. And then we look for the groups that match our just-in-time access. And if the user already has access to all the just-in-time groups, we tell them, you already have access to everything we have to offer. If they don't, then we give them an opportunity to select from a list of the groups that are available, and we ask them how long is the access needed. Now, one of the ways that that makes it really easy for our designer to implement changes is these are the buttons or the responses that are going to come back to the user. I'm going to go ahead and add the option for 1 minute here because I don't think we want to sit here for 15 minutes waiting for a timeout to occur. So I'm going to go ahead and do the approval or the wait period for 1 minute so we can watch this in the demo. And what we do is we send a request for approval out to a Slack channel. If it's approved, we notify the user of the access time, add the user to the Okta group, and move everything forward. So we notify access as it goes, and then we revoke it at the very end of our wait period. And if I look in my Okta group for GitHub users, I'm just going to refresh this. We can see that Robin's the only user in that group. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to my Slack and just validate just-in-time group. All right, let's run it. You know what? I don't think I published this. Let's go ahead and let's go check. I don't think I published the workflow, so it's not going to receive my Slack response. So let's go over and take a look. Yeah, it's not published yet, so let me publish this. And again, this makes it available, so the Slack mentioned, so it was in a draft stage. So let's go ahead and run this one more time, and we should get a response back from the workflow. So now that we sent our request, and now that the workflow is published, we're going to see that we see our welcome message come back from the workflow with our email address, and it's gathering the access that we're requesting. So I'm going to go ahead, and you can see in the choose here, we're going to pick the GitHub users because this is the one we want to use. And once we make that selection, it's going to ask us for how long. We're going to go ahead and say 1 minute because we don't want to wait here forever to do that. You can also see on the security side, I just happen to be a member of this channel, and we can see that we get a message looking for approval. The Torq engineering department was pulled from Okta. So again, this gives us the ability to enrich the data that we have coming in from Okta back to the analysts for that. We also see a message saying that we're granting them access for a minute, and also we're seeing the GitHub users has access. The request was approved. We can also see within Okta that my user has been added to this group. So whatever group membership or whatever access this provides me, it's now available to be used within Okta. And this will go away after 1 minute of time, again, as once that expires. And now we can see that the request has been expired and the access has been revoked. If we go back into Okta, we can see that information or that access has been pulled automatically by Torq. Again, maybe one of the things we may want to do, and we have been asked before, is how do we give access to more things? Maybe I look at this user group and make sure that they're a member of a specific group before we give them access, so that way we can only approve certain users. Maybe we want to have Jira create a ticket or an issue for every time the access is granted. So we can very easily go into this section here and add a Jira section. So maybe I want to add an issue, add a comment, close the issue. All of those things can be done very easily within this section of the workflow. And again, if I look for my Jira steps, just the way I started our presentation today of integrating with a ticketing system, we can take a workflow like this with just-in-time access and add this ability to do like create issues or update the issue status, or even adding comments to a specific issue. Again, just adding those components in there and fulfilling the keys that may be needed. Again, it makes this very extendable, easy to modify, easy to update, and a great use case for using Torq within your platform. So what's next? You saw how easy it was for me to pull templates from our template library. I think I pulled 4 or 5 today and had those running in a matter of minutes. But if you want to test it out, we can do a Torq demo, a guided walkthrough, a hands-on trial. You can jump right in. Go to torq.io/get-started to start that process. We highlighted a number of use cases today. These are the most common 10 use cases we see with our customers. Everything from the email phishing, endpoint threat hunting, cloud security posture management, and identity. All kinds of use cases that we can help you with. We're trusted by the world's best security teams as well. And again, thanks for watching. If you have any questions, we'll go ahead and take a few minutes to take those now.
Ryan, we did have a few questions coming in. Go ahead and fire one at you. The first one
Okay.
is there an on-premise deployment option for Torq?
Currently, we offer the ability to use what we call a runner that can run on-prem, but the main system does run in our cloud platform. But we can run commands on-prem to APIs that may be hosted locally.
Perfect. The next one we have is, can it be used to automate physical infrastructure or hardware, appliances, firewalls, servers, etc.?
Yeah, we have we have steps for specific firewall vendors to be able to do that. And again, in combination of using the runner, there are ways that we can call those APIs to be able to adjust settings. If there's an API available, we can help drive that.
Okay. And then here's another one that asked, would this replace their SOAR?
Not completely. There would be the automation side, obviously, that we can help, remediate and automate processes. Case management is one of the things that SOAR tools do, but we can also use Jira and ServiceNow for that. But the automation side on that particular use case is where we really shine.
Nice. Also, okay, so here's another one. What if I'm using both Slack and Microsoft Teams for different user groups?
Okay, I would assume that means we're using the same Slack and Teams within the same organization. So maybe I want to send a question or a message to a user that could be in either one. It just so happens this last week we added a template to be able to do just that, where you could send a nested workflow to send a question or a message to either one, and we'll find if we find them in either one, we'll send a message to them.
Okay. Looks like we just have a few more. One is, can I use a query from Splunk in a workflow?
Of course, we have the ability to query a Splunk instance, whether it's in the cloud or obviously with a runner, we can do that on-prem. And we have customers doing that to go get specific data, to do a query, pull that data in, and do some automated process against that.
Great. And last one I have here is it possible to use ServiceNow to open and update tickets?
Of course, we have integration with ServiceNow. You can pull tickets, incidents. You can even use ServiceNow to push events to Torq. For instance, when a ticket is closed, you could notify specific owners or specific people that specific types of issues or tickets are actually closed, and we can update them as well, either via Slack or Teams or email. However it may be, we can do workflows on those issues when they're, or tickets when they're closed, or even change state between one side or the other. And also I have workflows that can look at SLAs and some other things within ServiceNow as well.
Great. Well, thank you, Ryan. And thank you to everyone for joining us today. As Ryan has said, we are always available to answer questions or provide a demo. Visit us at torq.io to set up a demo, watch this and our other Intro to Torq on-demand webinars, or peruse our use cases or ebooks. A lot of great resources there at torq.io. And I hope to see you at our next webinar in July. Have a great day.